Nicholas, hey, congratulations on your new documentary film, Minted.
Thank you so much.
Now it's going to be part of the PBS Independent Lens series for yourself. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I've had three films play on PBS before nationally. My first film, La Americana, was on PBS America Reframed. And then my mo most recent documentary, Not Going Quietly, was on PBS POV, which is the other main documentary strand. And this is my first film ever on Independent Lens. I think it's in like 100 million homes and streaming on the PBS app. So it's a pretty wide exposure. And I think what's coolest about it is that it's going to reach people who really don't know anything about this subject matter, who just turn their TVs on to channel 13. And there still is a big audience on broadcast. And so I think it's cool that it's going to reach a non-traditional, maybe less online audience that already has all of their opinions set about the world of NFTs.
Well said. So for you, Nicholas, what actually sparked you to do this documentary, Minted, in the first place?
Yeah, so I have always really been interested in digital art, and I actually did not go to traditional film school, but went to art school studying digital art and digital artists. So I wasn't making kind of traditional movies. I was doing experimental videos and projection mapping, and I studied Namjoon Pike and other kind of non-traditional video artists of the time, and I very quickly realized, as Kevin McCoy, the artist in the film, says, that a digital art was not something that you would see in a gallery or in a museum, and it was therefore not really a viable career path as an artist. So I quickly realized that and went into making traditional documentary films. I also make commercials and branded content for my day job. Um, but I always loved this medium of digital art and was very familiar with the artist Beeple, who was kind of a hero to a lot of digital artists for many years, long before NFTs, and had built this huge following doing this work every day. And I was following him pretty closely on his Instagram in 2020 and early 2021 when he started to talk about NFTs. And I knew about crypto and was interested in crypto and participated in crypto markets before, not as an evangelist or as a somebody involved in the technology specifically, but just somebody who'd always been interested in it. And so when I saw these two worlds of digital art and crypto combined, I was fascinated by it, especially because it did this thing that nobody thought was possible, which was make a piece of digital art into something that you could buy and sell. Before
Hmm.
that, there was this idea that a piece of digital art is something that you just copied and put it on your hard drive and you hit right click and save. But a new kind of value had been ascribed to it. And right around that time, I met some producers, financiers who were in the crypto technology world who were also interested in the subject matter. And it was a really perfect fit to pursue. And so right away, we started finding the artists and casting the artists who would participate. Of course, Beeple, who was kind of the godfather of the movement, but then also photographers, musicians, painters who were participating in different mediums all around the world. And soon enough, we were in Nigeria and Cuba and Amsterdam. And at that time, we didn't know what the film was. We just knew we wanted to follow some artists doing this, and we really couldn't have imagined where the journey would go from there.
Nicholas, how did you select these artists specifically and then convince them to be participant in your documentary film?
Yeah, we cast a pretty wide net, and I had a pretty specific criteria of diversity, both of, of course, race and gender, but more importantly, diversity of medium, of artistic medium. So we wanted to show that people could use this technology who weren't just traditional digital artists like Beeple. And also people who came from different kind of artistic philosophies and perspectives that showed that this wasn't one archetypal movement. Who Justin Aversano, the photographer whose work is informed by um, Trauma, or Karina, the painter, whose work was a political reaction to the political situation in Cuba. And so creating that kind of geographic and philosophical diversity was important. Of course, a lot of that selection ultimately ended up happening in the edit room, because we shot with a lot of artists. And what ended up becoming really important was trying to thread them together as it pertained to the overall movement of the NFT market. And a big part of what this film is about is the relationship between art and commerce, which of course goes many centuries before NFTs. And we discovered that the thread that connected all of these was seeing the artists' reactions to the kind of rise and fall of this phenomenon. And of course, its current rise again as it's been adopted by museums and institutions and investors and all of that. And so the artists that we were kind of closest to during those moments were the ones who ended up becoming the protagonists of the film. Beeple, Justin Aversano, Latasha, and Kina Matahari, because seeing them in those moments, I think, created a kind of like vulnerability and connection that made the audience really relate to them and made them work as protagonists for the film.
Now, I always find this type of commerce industry sort of like a gold rush. But when you talk to these digital artists, did you find that they actually know what they're doing, or they were just lucky? You're
Sorry, I got
muted.
muted.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think everything in this world is a combination of talent and circumstance and luck. So I would like to think that there's that expression about like increasing the surface area on which the rain of luck can fall upon, or the thunderbolt of luck can strike. And I think that all of these artists increase that surface area because they all took risks and embrace this tool and embrace this new technology and tried to push something forward that others weren't doing, and that in many cases they even received ridicule for. And so I think that there is absolutely an element of the right time at the right place. Justin's collection of Twin Flames really resonated with NFT collectors because it was this kind of specific like collection of work that really worked for that. And same with Beeple's Everydays. He had done this thing that really worked, but it wasn't that all happened on one day. Beeple made those Everydays for 5,000 days for almost 15 years before really selling anything. He says in the film on Jimmy Fallon that before that, the most he'd ever sold work for was $100. So on one hand, he got lucky, and on the other hand, he worked incredibly hard. Now, today, I think it's very difficult for an artist to go into the NFT market and do what these artists did. However, I think there's always new opportunities to market yourself, new technologies and new tools that artists can use. And so I think that like enterprising nature of these artists and of all artists through history, who've the conceptual artists like Yves Klein, who we talk about in the film, or the early photography artists who've done interesting things and pushed their medium forward, are the ones who are going to succeed. And so I hope that the film takes an empathetic look at them and some degree of reverence, even if it criticizes the more kind of nefarious and malicious elements of the NFT market, which we show as well.
Well said, well said. And as tech savvy as I am, 3, 4 years ago, it is hard to wrap my head around, all these terminologies of NFT, blockchain, crypto, fungible, and so on. And you done it very well on this film. Tell us how you wanted to handle these terminologies and present it in layman's terms for those people who aren't in this industry.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think it's really important one because this is like really not a inherently, let me put it this way. This was the hardest film I've ever made. I've made films about undocumented immigrants. I've made films about people reckoning with terminal illness, very emotional subjects, and I've shot in war zones and other, conflict areas. And telling this story was the most daunting project I've ever taken on. And the reason for that is partly the scope of it, this global story where we filmed, over 100 days with more than a dozen characters and many more interviewees around the world. But beyond that, just undertaking trying to unpack this technology and world in a digestible way. It's you couldn't completely avoid it. We did not want to make this be a film, an explainer video, but also you had to give audiences, and I feel personally important that people do understand this technology. And so a big balance of the film was making sure that we had exactly the right dose of medicine with the honey of the characters and the journeys and the art. So we ended up on this format of kind of dictionary definition title cards, which sounds really boring when you say it out loud, but I think it works in the film. And even the idea of minting, which is kind of the double entendre of the film's title, which can mean both to mint an NFT, to create a new NFT on the blockchain, or to be minted, like the slang of having it made. We use that formula throughout to explain the core concepts. And I don't think I'll do it here in an interview. I think you have to watch the movie to say to understand what an NFT is. I hope you came away with a clear understanding of it, but ultimately, I do think it's important to say that regardless of what one thinks about this technology, and I think there's a lot of pros and cons that we try to show both in the film, it is important that audiences understand, and I hope that people come away from it. I'll mention that as a last point here, that there are people who are very evangelists for NFTs, some of whom we interview in the film, and evangelists for cryptocurrency as something that's going to exclusively change the world for the better. And then, of course, there's a very large percentage of people who think that it is all a scam or some, kind of pyramid scheme. And one thing that I've enjoyed as the people have started to react to the film is that I think a lot of the people who are in the evangelist cryptocurrency camps say, wait a minute, you're unfair about this point, or you're too critical here. What about this? Or we've solved this technical issue. And conversely, the people who think this is all, a scheme have watched the film and said, wow, all right, well, maybe there is something to it. That is interesting, that you can exchange value with no intermediary party. That is actually a fundamentally important technological development that this creates. And so I want people to take it seriously.
Well said, Nicholas. Thank you very much for carrying this conversation with us about Minted. I find this very educational in so many different ways because I learned a lot about this industry, and especially about the digital artists. Now I completely understand why a friend of mine actually bought one bought one years
I'm
ago.
not I'm not here to tell you to buy NFTs, but I am here to tell you that it's worth understanding as we enter a more digital universe. And yeah, I really appreciate the time, and I'm really glad that the film resonated with you.